enjoyed it, and he wants to give everybody a heads up on that and say that it's a really good thing to pick up. And he says, keep up the podcast. Love the ball busting.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes,
and glad you got a good purchase out of it.
Absolutely. And we're happy that you did that. And to be honest with you, on Amazon for $17.99, a 3-disc set, that's totally worth it. So I definitely want to say that for sure. On to letter number 11 from Dave Moses, who calls himself the fourth Dave. He says right here that he was hanging out watching TV with Cody. I don't know, I guess that's his girlfriend or something like that. He says watching The Bionic Woman from the 70s.
Maybe he was joking that he was hanging out with Cody.
Oh, I got you. That's what. Oh my God, I thought it was his girlfriend's name.
Come on,
okay.
Keep up.
Oh, jeez,
Sober up.
Sober up. They gotta listen to Noel. So he says that he was watching The Bionic Woman from the 70s, and he says there was a scene that was supposed to be an Arabic type prince at his palace, and then he says the scene is a bunch of people at the bottom of a palace steps in the backyard, and he saw these cement steps and the railing, and then he says he realized, he said to his wife, that's David Lee Roth's house. And then he says it gets better. He starts to read in the episode that the Bionic Woman, one of the actors in the show was Nathan Roth, which is Dave's dad. And he says, me and the wife picked out that the palace guard has to be Dave's dad. He looked just like him. And I wanted to share that information with you. Dave, I want to tell you that Nathan Roth, who's Dave's dad, who unfortunately passed on, he played first guard in Bionic Woman. He also appeared in $1 Billion Hobo, Malibu Beach, Witch's Brew, these are movies, Cat in the Cage, and The Day the Bubble Burst, the TV movie. And he's also an esteemed ophthalmologist who resided in San Marino, California. But I think that house that he was pointing out was in Pasadena. But yeah, that is wild, huh? I mean, to have that, I don't quite know what an ophthalmologist is doing acting in movies and television shows, but God, more power to him.
I'm not sure what that's all about. I went to look for the episode on YouTube, but I couldn't find it except for a quick clip.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. Now I'm going to have to...
Yeah, I got to check that out.
Like look on Netflix or something like that and see if it's there.
Yeah, definitely. And our last letter comes from Shannon the Dude. Oh, of course, we can't have a mailbag segment without Shannon the Dude. So he says here that Sammy Hagar haters might want to check out a song called I'll Wait in 1984. It's not like Sam showed up at Eddie's house with a synthesizer. It's not like Eddie wasn't heading toward the synth sound. If you compare Dreams to I'll Wait, Dreams actually rocks harder, and I feel like Sammy gets the blame. Number 2, Wolfie is not in Van Hagar. If we believe in such a thing as Van Hagar, Wolfie never played with Sam. That lineup is only the Bros and Mike. Number 1, Eddie fell in love with synthesizers, okay? And when Sammy came along, Sammy opened up Eddie's musical world so that Eddie could do a lot more different things than what he could with Dave. So he really widened Eddie's net so that Eddie could have a much bigger playground to play in. He definitely was into synthesizer at the time, for sure. And I think he was probably a little sick of the guitar, even though he knew he was tied to it, but he wanted to delve into that. That's for sure. Sammy said that in our interview from last year. Sammy also could sing anything, so it really worked to Ed's advantage. And I don't know if Eddie loves Sammy so much as he loved his newfound creative freedom, but I do think Dreams rocks hard, but I think All Wait has more edge and attitude to it than Dreams. Dreams is a little bit fluffy. It's got a little bit of a hallmarky lyrics, and I think All Wait is darker and has a more awesome driving beat to it. What do you think, Dave?
Both really good songs. Yeah, I do agree that Ed was on that path anyway.
Yeah.
And he was going to go down that path whether anyone liked it or not. I think All Wait is a little underrated.
Yeah, totally.
And, I mean, Dreams is just one of the better songs that Van Hagar ever did.
Sure.
So,
beautiful piece.
Just good music all around.
Right. And I do want to correct you there, Shannon the Dude. Wolf grew up with Sam being around. You got to remember, he was born in 1991, so he was Uncle Sammy to Wolf. And plus, Wolf did play with Sam when he toured with the band in 2004. If you remember, Wolf had a regular spot, on the show where he came out and played guitar. I think the kid was like, I don't know, what was he, 16, Dave, or something like that? He was like a child.
No, he was younger than 16 because he was 16 when he got in the band.
Oh, was he really? Oh, God.
He was, yeah, sure. That was, so he was like
14 or something. I don't know, 14?
13 or something like that.
Yeah, he was real young, but he was out on that tour. Remember, he came out and he did a whole spot.
But he wasn't playing with Sam. I mean, he was playing with Ed on a Sam tour.
But I'm saying he's familiar with Sam, and he has spent time with Sam, and he has even toured, with the band. So there is some linkage there. So anyway, that wraps up our mailbag segment. And we are on to our Skyscraper 30th anniversary celebration. We are going to be doing a deep dive discussion on the album, as well as an interview with Magic Moreno, the mixer and engineer for the record, followed by my interview with Steve Vai, who pontificates on Skyscraper, which he co-produced, co-wrote, and played on. And it's all coming up next. Take a listen.
I like to read. I like to read books. I read comic books. Whenever I used to see the movies, and go with my pop to the movies when I was very young, I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to really go to Arabia. So now we have the time to do it.
Pick up the top seller Van Halen Rising, how a Southern California backyard party band save heavy metal. The new book by Greg Renoff. Learn about the early history of one of America's most decorated rock bands. Renoff goes deep into the Pasadena roots of the Van Halen brothers, David Lee Roth, and Michael Anthony. Go to vanhalenrising.com, where you can get autographed copies of the book, t-shirts, guitar picks, beer koozies, and more. vanhalenrising.com. Also available at amazon.com.
Hi there, this is Martin Popoff, scribbler of many rock books, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
Well, you got to plan ahead. And also, if you don't place yourself geographically, if you don't go out there, what are you going to sing about? Again, you can join the Keith Richards fan club. Those are the rule rather than the exception. Don't get me wrong, I just get up a little earlier so we can accomplish as much as we can dream up and still drink the beer that my body needs, right?
Okay, folks, you asked for it, and here it is. We are doing our Skyscraper special for the 30th anniversary of David Lee Roth's second full-length album. It is 1988 when this came out. In, January 26th, Dave?
Oh, my gosh, you're asking me the day?
I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it exactly. Hold on.
All right. I think it was the 26th.
Yes. My daughter's birthday, January 26th, I thought it was. Which is Eddie's birthday, by the way.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Which is pretty funny, releasing it on Eddie's birthday. That's hysterical. Now, the band remained the same. It was Billy Sheehan, Greg Bissonette, and Steve Vai, except Ted Templeman wasn't producing this time. It was Dave producing with a co-produced by Steve Vai. But from all I have reported over the years and read, it was mainly Steve who produced this album.
Right, I was going to say, I remember an interview you did where you said, so Steve, you co-produced that, and he kind of rolled his eyes and he was like, yeah, I co-produced it.
Exactly.
Quotes, right?
Yeah. I think Steve Vai really cut his teeth on this album in many ways because this is a very Vai-centric album. He really is, in my opinion, the MVP of this album. He really shines here, except there's other elements that sort of drop off, and we'll get into that. So this was a turn in a little bit of a more commercial direction and a little more polished direction from Eat 'Em and Smile, which was definitely more Van Halen style. This was, like I said, Steve and Dave producing together. This is the last album of the initial David Lee Roth band lineup, which was, the three of them plus Dave. It's interesting because Sheehan left after the album was done, didn't even go on the tour, and they ended up replacing it with Matt Bissonette, Greg's brother. So the band toured extensively in the U.S. and Canada, as well as Europe, Japan, and Australia. This was a big outing for Dave, and he spent the entire year touring, which was incredible. Vai had claimed in all the press that Dave, during the time and afterwards, and many years afterwards, and you'll listen to Steve talk about the album in our exclusive interview with him later on in the episode, but Vai claims that Roth really wanted to try something different here. And it's often talked about Dave wanted to go in this sort of dance-oriented material direction. I don't quite get that whole perspective. Everybody talks about that. I don't get where there's any sort of dance thing here. Do you, Dave? Didn't you always find that a strange assessment?
I did, though the only person I ever really heard that referred to it as a dance album was Billy Sheehan. And while there's certainly one or two songs on there that veer off in that direction, I don't think the whole album is like this giant move towards dance.
No.
I mean, it wasn't like he was trying to be Janet Jackson or something like that.
No, not at all, not at all. But this is how I sort of view it. It's interesting, you know, they always say that hindsight's 20/20, so when I look back on this album, I had a clearer perspective on it. So you have sort of 5 killer rock tunes on there, and 1 acoustic song, 1 wildly experimental song, 1 showy Vegas tune, and 2 real poppy songs. And that's sort of the breakdown that I had about it. But I didn't see any signs of that whole dance thing. I think Steve even might have mentioned that dance thing too. They said that, Dave could see that the dance thing coming down the pike and he wanted to jump aboard that train. I'm just like, the problem that I have with this album in general, and I like this album, I have to say I do, and I have a strong affection for it. It was the senior year of my high school, and I loved the album when it came out, and I still love it today. But thing that bothers me, Dave, and I would imagine it must bother you too, but I felt like for the band that he had, he didn't really use it to its full potential on this album. I understand what he was trying to do, and that's fine, but I think when you have a band of the caliber of Greg Bissonette, Steve Vai, and Billy Sheehan, that you want to kind of utilize them. You know what I mean? If you have that kind of team, you want them to show their full-on power. And I felt like some of that was muted in the way of Bissonette, in the way of Billy Sheehan. Vai is fantastic on this album. He is all over this album. He is phenomenal. His playing is worth buying the album for. But I felt like there's hints and moments of greatness of the trio in there. There really is. And we'll get into it as we go through the songs. But there really is an album underneath this album, I feel. And Billy Sheehan sort of talked about that in the past, where he says, you know, the demos were sort of better than the end product. Maybe because I felt like this album needed a little grit. They needed Billy to actually stretch out a bit here. His bass is muted and very played down. I mean, he has a couple of nice little fills here and there, but he doesn't have the prominence that he had on Eat 'Em and Smile. And same thing goes with Greg Bissonette, but I felt Billy, of all people, got the short end of the stick, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you, and I was actually going to say that if you didn't. He is so underutilized on this album. I mean, I thought he was underutilized on Eat 'Em and Smile, too, but he's really underutilized here. There's 2 tracks that have a synth bass track.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of other songs, he's just playing standard stuff, and you're like, you have one of the most prominent bass players in your band, and this is what you're doing with him, next to nothing?
That's
like,
what was
why
unbelievable.
Bother? Why bother? And I get that Roth wanted something more polished. This is a more polished album. There's more overdubs.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Ted Templeman was more of a, hey, let's go for the raw sound. He was definitely going for that early Van Halen. Look, we're only doing it in a few takes. We're not doing a lot of overdubs.
Right.
I'm sorry, Steve. I know you like doing that, but we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And now that Steve could co-produce, he was overdubbing. I mean, you're right about him being, I don't know if I would call him the secret weapon, the not-so-secret weapon.
Right.
But he makes it look really easy.
Oh, yeah.
On this album.
Yeah.
He's just whipping off guitar solos and doing stuff.
Yeah.
You could get spoiled really well on how easy he makes it sound on this album.
Oh, yeah.
But the band is definitely underutilized from the vantage point of they're a rock band, and there's only a few rock songs on this.
Right.
Which isn't to say the rest of the album is crap.
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
But it's kind of like you've got this great band, but you're not using them for what they're really good for.
Yeah, that's true. Like we mentioned before, there's a certain style of production here. I think with Eat 'Em and Smile, those guys were playing together in the room, which is definitely Ted Templeman's style. And here you can tell there wasn't a lot of that going on. Like you said, a lot of overdubbing. And Dave, this album is drenched in synthesizer.